Here now, federal defense attorney Ron Chapman to talk more about this case. Ron, good morning to you, and thanks for being here. We've got some information coming in real time from the courtroom. The interpreters are being sworn in, and there are two cameras currently in the courtroom. One is on Ibarra. The defense says it's intrusive, and it doesn't allow them to speak confidentially, so the judge is asking the media not to stream when the judge isn't on the bench. What do you make of that request as this bench trial gets underway?
Certainly a very reasonable request coming from the defense. The defense needs to have the opportunity to communicate with counsel. And if lips are read or demeanor is really heavily watched during those moments, it would be considered intrusive. I would make the same motion as well. So certainly a fair call by the defense there.
I want to talk about a couple of things that Alex just mentioned. NewsNation was there early on following Laken Riley's tragic death and noticed a few things. One, neighbor saying she ran through that apartment complex that Jose Ibarra would sit outside. And two, the potential that he dropped bloody clothes into the garbage can. Is any of that admissible, and how does that lead into the charges?
So this is exactly why the defense requested a bench trial. That evidence may be admissible, but the arguments for keeping it out are going to be very technical. And where you have technical arguments, where you're hoping that legal issues sort of predominate a case, sometimes a bench trial makes good sense. I think it's a bit of a desperation move by the defense here. But I'm hearing that the video evidence is relatively fuzzy and difficult to interpret. If that is the case, and it's not what we call probative, showing that he may have committed the crime, it may ultimately be kept out by the judge. I think we're going to have to see when a foundation is laid for that evidence by the prosecution during this case, which we should see pretty early in the government's case.
A question here, Ron, about malice murder and felony murder. He is facing 1 count of malice and 3 counts of felony murder. Describe for us the difference.
Well, the malice murder is basically going to be the intent to murder. Felony murder is often a crime. It's relatively easy to prove. It's murder during the commission of a felony. That's sort of a fallback charge. In murder cases, you're able to plead these in the alternative, meaning you can put on several different theories of murder and ask the jury to determine whether or not the defendant committed either one of those. That makes it very difficult for the defense in this case because they're going to have to put on a defense to both theories. Now, there's not a lot of evidence of intent here. There's, obviously the potential smashing over the head with a rock, which would be very egregious and certainly intentional, but the evidence linking him to that scene isn't as good as the evidence linking him to that apartment complex and the video camera evidence, if that actually pans out.
Isn't there, though, DNA under her fingernails that link back to him, and that would appear pretty damning?
Yes, absolutely. That evidence is apparently DNA match and confirmed. But of course, we have seen some issues with DNA evidence throughout cases. We saw that way back during the Oklahoma City bombing. Since then, we've had a lot of convictions overturned based on DNA evidence. And of course, we've got significant problems with labs and testing around the country, but specifically in Georgia. So I hope that they're able to put on a great foundation for that evidence, but it's not always ironclad and foolproof just because we say we have DNA. Understood.
As a defense attorney, how would you tackle this case? What are you expecting the defense to do?
Well, I think that going to the bench trial was an interesting call. I probably still would have stuck with a jury. I don't like this. That being said, this judge was appointed by a Democrat, which maybe is helpful when the immigration issue comes to play. But in terms of defense, I think there's a few things we're going to have to hit really hard. First, the DNA evidence. You're going to really have to show that there was some contamination in the lab or issues. The video evidence, if that doesn't actually appear to be a bar and it's not very clear, then I think that the government's going to have some problems if they put that on as potential evidence. I think that this is a pretty good case for the government. It's going to be a very hard fight for the defense. Ultimately foresee some sort of conviction happening in this case, either on the felony murder or the malice. It's going to be a tough road for the defense here. You can see on the screen Laken's 911 call. We want to play a portion of that. It's about a minute long. Here that is.
County 911.
Yo Tango. There is a long break in what happens next. It was Lakin's mom, who Lakin usually talks to on her run, who started calling Lakin at around 9:06 that morning. And you'll just see the call logs from that and the evidence of that through Lakin's phone. And when she could not reach Lakin, she began calling Lakin's 3 roommates. And you'll meet all 3 of them: Lily Steiner, Sophia Magana, and Connolly Huff. All 3 of them are University of Georgia students at the time. They were all seniors. And Lakin herself was at UGA, but had recently transferred to the University of Augusta Athens campus because she wanted to be a nurse. But the 4 of them still live together. And the roommates are all, I would say, technologically savvy.
All right, Ron, I want to bring you back in here, and this is where the real emotion of this case starts to factor in. And I think it's difficult for any of us to listen to that call knowing what happened to Lakin, to not have your heart sink and know that her family is in that courtroom right now listening to those final moments. How does the judge factor this into the case and the evidence and ultimately his decision?
Well, this is really tough because we have to remember that judges are elected, which means that they ultimately are going to be responsible to the people for the decisions that they make. And when it comes to a massive high-profile bench trial that we have in this case, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the judge to make the right decision. But here's the complexity. The public in that area doesn't always have all of the information. Of course, this trial is going to be streamed, but there's a lot that's going to be said about it and the evidence. It is going to be very difficult for a judge to acquit here. So when you're the prosecution, you play up the emotional angles, not for the judge, you play it up for the camera. That's certainly going to be very hard for the family to hear. When you're the defense, you go on the technical evidence, but you also have to address the emotion in the courtroom. So you're really going to play it the same as if you were having a jury trial. I hear that her sorority sisters are in the back of the courtroom. There's family. This is going to be a very, very emotional trial. It's certainly going to be sad for the family to go through, but I'm certain that they would want to make sure that the right person was convicted in this case, and that's what we're looking to determine through this trial.
Yeah, it's just chilling to hear. All right, we'll continue to monitor. Ron Chapman, thank you so much for your perspective. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.